Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour and watched the stars stretch into lines as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The year was 2157 and humanity had finally done it. They had broken free from their solar system and ventured into the deep darkness of space beyond their home. Jake was 35 years old with graying hair at his temples. He had served in the Earth Space Navy for 15 years before being chosen to command humanity's first deep space exploration mission. The responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders, but he carried it with quiet pride. Dr. Lisa Carter moved beside him to check the sensor readings. She was the ship's chief xenobiologist, a brilliant woman in her early 30s with short brown hair and keen green eyes. Lisa had spent her entire career studying the possibility of alien life, and now she might finally get to meet some. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks worked at the tactical station. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and steady hands. Ryan had come from a military family and believed strongly in protecting Earth and her people. He kept the ship's weapons ready but hoped they would never need to use them. Engineer Kate Sullivan called out from her station near the back of the bridge. She was younger than the others at 28 but already considered one of the best engineers in the fleet. Kate had designed many of the improvements that made this long journey possible. Her red hair was always tied back when she worked, and her blue eyes missed nothing when it came to the ship's systems. The Endeavour was humanity's pride. She was sleek and powerful with the newest fusion drives and the best computers Earth could build. The ship carried a crew of 200 brave souls who had volunteered to leave everything behind and explore the unknown. Jake looked at the main screen, showing the empty space around them. They had traveled further from Earth than any human before them. The nearest star was still days away even at their incredible speed. He felt both excited and nervous about what they might find out here. Lisa suddenly straightened at her station, and her face grew serious. She pressed her hand to her earpiece and listened carefully to something. Her eyes widened and she turned to Jake with urgency in her voice. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission. It's not coming from Earth and it's not any frequency we use. This is definitely alien in origin." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Everyone had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here they felt the weight of history settling around them. Jake moved closer to Lisa's station. "Can you decode it?" Lisa's fingers flew over her controls as she tried to make sense of the strange signal. "It's very weak and breaking up badly. The source appears to be about 6 hours away at maximum speed." "Captain, this sounds like a distress call." Ryan turned from his station with concern on his face. "Could be a trap, sir. We don't know anything about alien intentions or capabilities." Kate looked up from her engineering console. "The ship's running perfectly, Captain. We can handle whatever we find out there." Jake considered the options carefully. Earth's orders had been clear: explore, observe, and report back. Make contact only if absolutely safe. But those orders had been written by people who had never faced this situation. Out here in the darkness, Jake had to make decisions that could affect all of humanity. Another burst of static filled the bridge, and Lisa managed to clear up some of the signal. Through the interference came sounds that were clearly not human, but somehow conveyed desperate need. The alien voices rose and fell in patterns that suggested fear and pleading. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "whatever they are, they're in serious trouble." Jake looked around at his crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy because they believed in exploration and discovery. They had also sworn an oath to help those in need wherever they might be found. "Set course for the signal," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." Ryan started to protest, but Jake held up his hand. "We came out here to find new life, Commander. We can't turn our backs on the first aliens we encountered just because there might be danger." The Endeavour changed course and her powerful engines pushed her toward the source of the distress call. As they got closer, Lisa was able to clean up more of the transmission. The alien voices became clearer and their desperation more obvious. Getting visual contact?" Ryan announced from his station. His voice carried surprise and concern. "Captain, you need to see this." The main screen changed to show a ship unlike anything humans had ever imagined. It was beautiful and graceful, with flowing curves that seemed to bend light around them. But the alien vessel was clearly damaged. Parts of its hull were torn open and debris floated around it in a slowly expanding cloud. "My God," Lisa whispered. "It's incredible." The alien ship was much larger than the Endeavor, but appeared to be drifting without power. Scorch marks covered its surface, and Jake could see that whatever had attacked it had been incredibly destructive. "Any signs of life?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her station for several minutes before nodding. "Definite life signs, but they're weak. Captain, there are survivors on that ship, but I don't think they have much time." Kate studied the readings from her engineering station. "Their power systems are failing. At the current rate, they'll lose life support within hours." Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be carefully planned and executed under controlled conditions. Instead, he was faced with a rescue mission for beings he knew nothing about. "Can we dock with them?" he asked Kate. "Not directly. Their docking ports aren't compatible with ours. But we could bring some of them aboard using the shuttle bay if they can survive in our atmosphere." Lisa was already running atmospheric analysis on the alien ship. "Their air is different from ours, but I think we could adapt our life support systems temporarily. Captain, if we're going to help them, we need to do it soon." Ryan moved closer to Jake and spoke in a low voice. "Sir, we have no idea what we're dealing with. These beings could be dangerous. They could carry diseases we can't fight. This goes against every safety protocol we have." Jake looked at the damaged alien ship on the screen. Somewhere inside that vessel were living beings who were dying while he debated whether to help them. The decision suddenly became very simple. "Prepare the shuttle bay for emergency rescue operations," Jake ordered. "All departments, this is a humanitarian mission. We're going to save as many of them as we can." The rescue operation took 6 hours and saved 43 alien survivors. The beings called themselves Zephyrians, and their leader was Ambassador Veltar, a tall, graceful creature with skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal in the light. When he spoke through the translation device that Dr. Lisa Carter had quickly assembled, his voice carried the weight of great sorrow. Captain Jake Morrison sat across from Veltar in the Endeavor's main conference room. The ambassador's large eyes reflected depths of pain that Jake could understand even across the vast differences between their species. Around the table sat Lisa, Ryan Brooks, and Kate Sullivan, all listening carefully as Veltar told his story. "We call them the Devourers," Veltar said, his translated words carrying an electronic tone but somehow still conveying emotion. "They are machines, but not like any technology our people have ever seen. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty shells of rock." Lisa leaned forward with scientific curiosity mixed with horror. "You mean they strip away all life?" "More than that," Veltar replied. "They take everything. The atmosphere, the water, the very elements that make up the planet's crust. They leave worlds that are nothing more than barren stones floating in space." Kate's engineering mind tried to grasp the scale of such destruction. How is that even possible? The energy requirements alone would be massive. "We do not understand their technology," Veltar admitted. "Our greatest scientists studied the few pieces of wreckage we recovered from early encounters. The materials are unlike anything in our databases. They seem to repair themselves and adapt to whatever weapons we use against them." Ryan had been listening with growing concern about the military implications. "How many worlds have they taken?" Veltar's crystalline features seemed to dim with sadness. 17 systems in the past 2 cycles, billions of lives lost. "My own homeworld of Zephyr Prime fell just days ago. We are all that remains of our civilization." The conference room fell into silence as the humans absorbed this information. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. If these Devourers were moving through this region of space, Earth could be in their path. "Ambassador," Jake said carefully, "where are these machines heading next?" We believe they follow shipping routes and trade corridors. They seem drawn to areas with high technology and dense populations. Veltar paused and looked directly at Jake. Captain Morrison, I must warn you that your world may be in great danger. The Devourers will detect your broadcast signals and energy signatures eventually. Lisa exchanged worried glances with her colleagues. Earth's radio and television broadcasts had been traveling through space for over 2 centuries. Any sufficiently. Advanced technology could track those signals back to their source. Is there anywhere safe we can take you? Jake asked. Someplace where your people can rebuild? For the first time since the rescue, Veltar's expression showed something like hope. There is a place called Nexus Prime. It is the capital world of the Galactic Federation, a union of 12 advanced species that has maintained peace for over 1,000 years. If anyone can stand against the Devourers, it would be the Federation. Kate looked puzzled. We've never detected any signals from a Galactic Federation. How is that possible? The Federation uses quantum communication networks that do not rely on electromagnetic radiation, Veltar explained. Your species would not be able to detect our transmissions with current technology. Ryan leaned back in his chair as the full scope of the situation became clear. So there's been an entire galactic civilization out there and we never knew. The Federation has been aware of humanity for some time, Veltar said. Your species was classified as a developing civilization under observation. First contact was not scheduled for another 50 of your years. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and frustration. Humanity had been struggling alone in the darkness while an entire community of civilizations existed just beyond their reach. Now, faced with an extinction-level threat, those same advanced beings might be their only hope. Will you take us to this Federation? Jake asked. Veltar nodded slowly. It is the least I can do after you saved our lives. But Captain, I must warn you that the Federation Council can be particular about newcomer species. They have protocols and procedures that have been in place for centuries. What kind of protocols? Lisa asked. They will want to evaluate your species' technological level, social development, and potential contributions to galactic civilization. The process normally takes decades of careful study and gradual integration. Jake stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars that suddenly seemed much less empty than before. Ambassador, with respect to their protocols, we may not have decades. If these Devourers are as dangerous as you say, every day we delay could cost lives. I understand your urgency, Captain. I will do everything in my power to expedite the process. Your actions in rescuing my people should carry significant weight with the Council. Over the next 3 days, the Endeavor followed Veltar's navigation instructions toward the heart of known space. The journey revealed the true scope of galactic civilization as they passed trade routes marked by beacon stations and shipping. Lanes filled with vessels from dozens of different species. Lisa spent every waking hour learning about Federation technology and society from the Zephyrian survivors. The level of advancement was staggering. Species that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, others with natural telepathic abilities, and civilizations that had mastered energy sources humanity couldn't even theorize about. Kate worked with Zephyrian engineers to understand their propulsion systems and power generation methods. The knowledge was overwhelming, but she absorbed everything she could. Knowing it might be crucial for humanity's survival, Ryan studied Federation military protocols and defense strategies. The scale of their operations was impressive, but he noticed something troubling. For all their advanced technology and centuries of experience, the Federation was losing the war against the Devourers. When Nexus Prime finally appeared on their sensors, the sight took everyone's breath away. The planet was a work of art, with gleaming cities that spiraled up into the clouds and orbital platforms that looked like crystalline flowers floating in space. Welcome to the center of galactic civilization, Veltar said as dozens of ships from various species surrounded the Endeavor in formation. Captain Morrison, you are about to make history as the first human to address the Galactic Council. Jake looked at his crew and felt both pride and apprehension. They had come so far. from Earth and learned so much, but now came the real test. They would have to convince beings far more advanced than themselves that humanity deserved a seat at the galactic table, and more importantly, that humans could help in the fight against an enemy that was threatening all life in the galaxy. The future of both humanity and the Federation might depend on what happened in the next few hours. The Council Chamber of Nexus Prime was the most magnificent structure Captain Jake Morrison had ever seen. The massive dome stretched hundreds of meters above them, its surface showing real-time images of star systems across the galaxy. 12 distinct sections surrounded the central speaking area, each designed to accommodate a different alien species in comfort. Jake stood in the center with Dr. Lisa Carter and Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks beside him. Ambassador Veltar had spent hours preparing them for this moment, explaining the customs and expectations of each council member. Now they faced beings whose civilizations were older than human recorded history. High Chancellor Zorthak of the Cronan Empire dominated the military section of the chamber. He was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall with armored skin that gleamed like polished metal. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he reviewed data streams about the human delegation. The Cronans had been the Federation's primary military force for 8 centuries, and their pride in that role was obvious. Etherian Sage Mirandus floated in a section filled with soft light and gentle music. The Etherians were beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millennia ago. They appeared as shifting patterns of light that somehow conveyed wisdom and ancient knowledge. Their role in the Federation was to provide guidance and long-term perspective on difficult decisions. The other 10 species were equally impressive in their own ways. The Syntharchs had replaced most of their biological components with advanced technology. The Aquatic Federation representatives lived in massive tanks of specially treated water. There were species that communicated through color changes, others that existed partially in different dimensions, and beings that seemed to be living crystal formations. Jake felt very small and primitive standing before such advanced civilizations. But he remembered why they were here. Earth was in danger, and humanity needed allies to survive what was coming. Honored council members, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Endeavor. 3 days ago, my crew rescued survivors of a Zephyrian refugee ship that had been attacked by the entities you know as Devourers. High Chancellor Zorthak's metallic voice boomed across the chamber. Yes, we are aware of your humanitarian gesture, Captain Morrison. Ambassador Veltar has briefed us on your species' intervention in their crisis. The way he said humanitarian gesture made it sound like a quaint custom rather than a life-saving rescue operation. Jake felt his jaw tighten but continued with his prepared speech. The Zephyrian survivors have told us about the threat these Devourers pose to all life in the galaxy. My crew and I are here to offer humanity's assistance in the fight against this enemy. A ripple of what Jake interpreted as amusement passed through several council sections. The Syntharch representative spoke in mechanical tones that somehow managed to convey condescension. Captain Morrison, we appreciate your species' enthusiasm, but you must understand the reality of the situation. Humanity has barely achieved faster than light travel. Your weapons technology is primitive by galactic standards. Your ships are small and lightly armed. Lisa stepped forward, her scientific training helping her stay calm despite the dismissive tone. Counselors, while it's true that human technology is less advanced than yours, we believe our different perspective might be valuable, sometimes. An outside viewpoint can reveal solutions that haven't been considered. Etherian Sage Mirandus' light patterns shifted to what Veltar had taught them indicated polite disagreement. Dr. Carter, your species has admirable optimism, but this conflict requires capabilities far beyond what humanity currently possesses. The Devourers have destroyed civilizations with technology thousands of years more advanced than yours. Hi. Chancellor Zorthak accessed a holographic display showing human military capabilities based on long-range observation. Your largest warships carry projectile weapons and primitive fusion warheads. The Cronin Empire's smallest patrol craft could destroy your entire fleet without sustaining damage. Ryan's military pride flared, but he kept his voice respectful. High Chancellor, we understand the technological gap, but humans have always found ways to overcome superior opponents through strategy, determination, and unconventional thinking. Commander Brooks, Zorthek replied, the Federation has been fighting the Devourers for 2 standard cycles. We have employed every strategy known to military science. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that can withstand stellar radiation, yet we continue to lose ground against this enemy. The Aquatic Federation representative spoke through a translation device that made their voice sound like whale song. The young species means well, but they do not understand the scope of the threat. Entire star systems have been consumed. Billions of lives have been lost. This is not a conflict for newcomers to galactic civilization. Jake looked around the chamber at the faces and forms of beings who represented the peak of galactic achievement. Every one of them radiated confidence in their own superiority and gentle dismissal of human capabilities. It reminded him of something from Earth's history when established powers had underestimated smaller, more determined opponents. Counselors, Jake said, raising his voice slightly to get their attention. I understand your position, but I want you to consider something. Ambassador Veltar told us that the Federation has been fighting the Devourers for 2 cycles using conventional military approaches. In that time, 17 star systems have fallen. Perhaps it's time to try something unconventional. Sage Mirandus. Light patterns shifted to indicate patient explanation. Captain Morrison. The Federation represents the combined wisdom and experience of 12 advanced civilizations spanning thousands of years of spacefaring history. We have considered every possible approach to this threat. Have you considered that maybe your advancement is part of the problem? Lisa asked suddenly. The chamber fell silent at her words. From what we've learned, the Devourers adapt to whatever technology you use against them. They repair themselves and become stronger after each encounter. But they've been doing this by studying advanced Federation technology. High Chancellor Zorthek has 4 arms crossed in a gesture of dismissal. Dr. Carter, I appreciate your attempt at strategic analysis, but military science is not advanced theoretical physics. There are fundamental principles that apply regardless of technological level. The Council deliberated for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, Sage Miranda spoke for the group. Captain Morrison, the Council appreciates humanity's offer of assistance. However, we believe your species would be better served by focusing on the defense and evacuation of your homeworld. We will assign you protected status within the Federation and provide escort ships to help you relocate your population to safer sectors. Jake felt the dismissal like a physical blow. They were being politely but firmly told to run away while more capable beings handled the real work. Around him, he could see Lisa and Ryan struggling with their own frustration at being written off so completely. We thank the Council for their consideration, Jake said formally, though his voice carried undertones of disappointment and determination. However, humanity will not abandon our world without a fight. As they left the council chamber, escorted by Veltar and a small honor guard, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the Federation's confidence in their own superiority might be exactly what the Devourers were counting on. 3 months had passed since the council's dismissal, and Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Haven's rest station watching the Federation's war effort collapse through long-range sensors. The border station had become a refugee collection point as world after world fell to the advancing Devourer fleet. Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically in the makeshift laboratory they had set up in the station's lower levels. She had been studying fragments of Devourer technology that Ambassador Veltar had managed to salvage from his homeworld. The pieces were unlike anything in human experience, seeming to shift and change at the molecular level even when inactive. Engineer Kate Sullivan had spent weeks integrating Federation technology with human systems aboard the Endeavor. The hybrid upgrades had improved their ship's capabilities dramatically, but Jake wondered if it would be enough for what was coming. The Federation had shared their technology freely with the humans, treating them like honored refugees rather than potential allies. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks monitored the tactical displays showing Federation fleet movements. Each day brought worse news as the mighty armadas of the Cronin Empire were systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. The latest transmission from High Chancellor Zorthak had been desperate. The Cronin home fleet, pride of the Federation military, had engaged the Devourers in a massive battle near the Kepler Nebula. Of 300 capital ships that entered the fight, only 12 had escaped. Zorthak himself was missing and presumed dead after his flagship disappeared in a brilliant flash of destructive energy. "Captain," Lisa called out from her laboratory workstation, "I think I've found something important." Jake hurried down to the lab where Lisa had spread Devourer fragments across multiple analysis tables. Her green eyes were bright with excitement and discovery. "The Devourers aren't just machines," she said, pointing to readings on her display screen. "They're quantum-level constructs that exist partially in normal space and partially in subspace. That's why Federation weapons can't hurt them effectively. The energy just passes through their shifted dimensional matrix." Kate looked up from the fusion core specifications she was reviewing. That would explain their self-repair capabilities, too. They're constantly rebuilding themselves using quantum templates stored in subspace. "But here's the interesting part," Lisa continued. "Their quantum cores have to synchronize with normal spacetime to interact with matter and energy. During that synchronization process, they become vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies." Ryan joined the group around Lisa's workstation. "What kind of frequencies?" "That's the amazing part. The frequencies that destabilize their quantum cores are exactly the ones that human fusion drives naturally emit as background radiation. It's something unique to our fusion technology, because we use magnetic confinement fields that other species abandoned centuries ago." Jake studied the data Lisa was showing them. "You're saying our primitive technology produces something that advanced civilizations don't?" "Exactly. The Federation species all use zero-point energy or matter conversion systems that operate on completely different principles. They don't generate the kind of electromagnetic interference that our fusion drives create." Kate was already running calculations on her engineering tablet. "If we could amplify and focus those frequencies, we might be able to create a weapon that could actually hurt these things." Over the next week, Kate worked with salvaged Federation equipment to build what she called a quantum disruptor. The weapon system required a human fusion core to generate the base frequencies in Federation, focusing crystals to amplify and direct the energy beam. The first test was conducted on a small Devourer fragment in a containment field. When Kate activated the disruptor, the fragment simply dissolved into quantum static and disappeared. The effect was immediate and complete. "It works," Kate said with quiet satisfaction. "But the power requirements are enormous. We can only fire this thing a few times before we'd have to completely recharge the fusion core." Ryan was already thinking about tactical applications. "How many shots would we get in a typical engagement?" "Maybe 6 or 7 before we'd be dead in space," Kate replied. "And that's assuming the Endeavor's fusion core can handle the power drain without melting down." Jake looked at the weapon specifications and felt both hope and dread. They had found a way to fight the Devourers, but it would require them to get close enough to use short-range weapons against an enemy that had destroyed entire fleets at long range. The decision became urgent when Ambassador Veltar burst into the laboratory with tears streaming down his crystalline face. "Captain Morrison, Nexus Prime is under attack. The Devourers have reached the Federation capital. The Council is evacuating, but most of the civilian population is trapped." Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. The Federation had dismissed humanity as too primitive to help, but now their capital world was dying and there was nowhere left to run. The Endeavor was the only ship in range that might be able to make a difference. "How long until the planet falls?" Jake asked. "Hours at most," Veltar replied. "The orbital defense platforms are already destroyed." The Devourer ships are beginning atmospheric processing operations. Lisa gathered her research data while Kate began the complex process of installing the quantum disruptor on the Endeavor. They had never intended to test the weapon in actual combat, but circumstances were forcing their hand. Ryan pulled up tactical displays showing the situation at Nexus Prime. The Devourer fleet consisted of massive geometric constructs that dwarfed anything the Federation had ever built. There were 12 primary vessels, each one larger than a Federation space station, surrounded by hundreds of smaller harvesting units. "Captain," Ryan said quietly, "this is suicide. We're one ship against a fleet that destroyed the entire Federation." "Military." Jake looked around at his crew. These people had followed him across the galaxy and trusted his judgment even when it went against orders. Now he was asking them to fly into what appeared to be certain death. "I won't order anyone to." "Come with me," Jake said. "This has to be voluntary. Anyone who wants to transfer to one of the refugee ships can do so with no judgment." Kate was the first to speak. "I've spent 3 months building this weapon. I want to see if it works." Lisa nodded firmly. "If we don't try, everyone on Nexus Prime dies anyway. At least this way they have a chance." Ryan checked his sidearm and smiled grimly. "Besides, someone has to show these advanced civilizations how primitive humans fight." Ambassador Veltar stepped forward. "Captain, I cannot ask you to risk your lives for our world after the way the Council treated you." Jake put his hand on the alien's shoulder in a gesture of friendship. "Veltar, you didn't dismiss us? You saved our lives by warning us about the Devourers. Now it's our turn to return the favor." As the Endeavor departed Haven's rest station for what might be humanity's first and last battle in the Galactic War, Jake couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. The Federation had told them they were too primitive to fight, but it was their primitive technology that might be the key to victory. The journey to Nexus Prime would take 18 hours at maximum speed. Jake spent that time preparing his crew for a battle that would either save the Federation capital or add humanity to the long list of species that had fallen to the Devourers. The UES Endeavor dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus Prime system, and Captain Jake Morrison immediately saw why the Federation had lost. 12 massive Devourer constructs hung in space around the beautiful capital world like dark geometric tumors. Each one was kilometers long and bristled with harvesting equipment that was slowly stripping away the planet's atmosphere. Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically at her science station, scanning the enemy fleet for weaknesses. The Devourer ships were even more alien up close, their surfaces shifting and flowing like liquid metal while maintaining rigid geometric shapes. Energy patterns danced across their hulls in ways that hurt to look at directly. Engineer Kate Sullivan monitored the quantum disruptor from her station. The weapon was fully charged and ready, but she could only get 6 shots before the Endeavor's fusion core would be completely drained. Against 12 massive enemy ships and hundreds of smaller harvesting units, 6 shots seemed impossibly inadequate. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks studied the tactical situation with growing concern. The Devourer ships were arranged in a perfect defensive formation around Nexus Prime. They had learned from their encounters with Federation forces and were taking no chances with the planet's remaining defenders. "Captain," Ryan said, "there's no way to approach those ships without being detected. They'll destroy us long before we get within weapons range." Jake stared at the main screen showing the enemy fleet. Somewhere on the planet below, billions of beings were dying while their supposedly advanced protectors fled in panic. The Federation Council's evacuation ships were struggling to escape the system as Devourer fighters hunted them down one by one. "What if we don't try to sneak up on them?" Jake asked suddenly. "What if we announce ourselves and let them think we're just another Federation ship trying to escape?" Lisa looked up from her sensors. "That's incredibly risky, Captain. If they scan us and realize we're human, they might see us as a new threat. Or they might dismiss us as irrelevant," Jake replied. "From what Veltar told us, the Devourers have been studying Federation technology for months. They'd probably think they understand everything we can do. Kate was already running power calculations. If we approach at a steep angle from below the orbital plane, we might be able to get close to one of the smaller constructs before they realize we're a threat. Ryan nodded slowly as he began to see the plan. Hit and run tactics. Strike fast, move fast, and don't give them time to adapt. The Endeavor changed course and began its approach toward the Devourer fleet. Jake felt his heart pounding as they drew closer to enemy ships that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than his own. Everything depended on the next few minutes. The first Devourer construct was 2 kilometers long and covered in harvesting equipment that was processing atmospheric gases from Nexus Prime. It hung in space like a dark cathedral, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Kate announced, her hands hovering over the quantum disruptor controls. Jake watched the tactical display as they approached their target. The Devourer ship showed no signs of noticing them, apparently dismissing the small human vessel as another fleeing refugee ship. Fire, Jake ordered. The quantum disruptor beam struck the Devourer construct at its center mass, and the effect was immediate and spectacular. The massive ship simply began to dissolve from the inside out as its quantum matrix collapsed. Within seconds, 2 kilometers of advanced alien technology had been reduced to floating debris. The destruction of the first Devourer ship sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The remaining 11 constructs immediately changed formation and began scanning for the source of the attack. They know we're here now, Ryan reported as targeting sensors from multiple ships began focusing on the Endeavor. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers as Kate recharged the weapon for their second shot. The Endeavor was fast and maneuverable compared to the massive Devourer ships, but their escort fighters were beginning to swarm toward the human vessel. Second target acquired, Kate announced as they lined up on another harvesting construct. The quantum disruptor fired again, and another Devourer ship dissolved into quantum static. The enemy fleet was now fully alert and hunting for the small ship that had somehow destroyed 2 of their number. Over the next hour, Jake led the Endeavor on a deadly game of cat and mouse through the Nexus Prime system. They struck fast and disappeared behind asteroids and gas clouds before the Devourers could retaliate. 4 more enemy ships fell to the quantum disruptor before Kate's weapon finally exhausted the fusion core. "That's it, Captain," Kate reported. "We're running on emergency power now. No more shots." Jake looked at the tactical display showing 6 remaining Devourer constructs. They had cut the enemy fleet in half, but it still wasn't enough to save Nexus Prime. The planet was still being consumed, and the Endeavor was now defenseless. Then Ryan's voice cut through the bridge with excitement. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Federation transponders, but they're not evacuation vessels." The main screen lit up as dozens of alien ships appeared throughout the system. They were cargo haulers, mining vessels, and civilian transports that had been hastily converted into warships. Ambassador Veltar's voice came over the communication system from the lead vessel. "Captain Morrison," when word spread through the refugee fleet that humans had actually hurt the Devourers, every ship captain with any weapons volunteered to return and fight. More ships continued to arrive as the news spread across the galaxy. The Synth-Arcs sent their remaining automated fleets. Surviving Cronin warriors brought their personal combat vessels. Even species that had never fought before armed their ships and joined the growing armada. Lisa was scanning the arriving ships with amazement. "There must be over 200 vessels out there now. Every species in the Federation is represented." The tide of battle turned as the combined fleet attacked the remaining Devourer ships, armed with the knowledge that quantum disruptors could hurt their enemy. Federation engineers had quickly modified their own weapons to generate similar electromagnetic frequencies. It wasn't as effective as the human-built versions, but it was enough. The last Devourer construct fell 3 hours after the Endeavor had fired its first shot. As debris from the enemy fleet drifted through space around the saved world of Nexus Prime, Jake received a transmission from the planet's surface. "Hi. Chancellor Zorthok had survived the destruction of his flagship and was now broadcasting from the Federation Council chambers. His metallic voice carried a tone Jake had never heard before: humility. "Captain Morrison, the Council formally apologizes for our earlier dismissal of humanity's offer. We allowed our pride and assumptions to blind us to your potential contributions. We would be honored if humanity would consider joining a new alliance based on mutual respect rather than technological superiority." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Lisa was coordinating with Federation scientists to share quantum disruptor technology. Kate was helping alien engineers understand human fusion drive principles. Ryan was working with the growing Allied fleet to hunt down remaining Devourer forces in distant systems. "High Chancellor," Jake replied, "humanity accepts your offer, but we propose calling it the Terran Coalition instead of the Federation. This new alliance should be built on the idea that every species has something valuable to contribute, regardless of how advanced their technology might be." As rescue ships began evacuating survivors from Nexus Prime and scientists from dozens of species worked together to understand how humanity had succeeded where advanced civilizations had failed, Jake felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The galaxy had not believed in humans until they had answered the call for help. Now, as the first human ships began arriving from Earth to join the new coalition, Jake knew that humanity had found its place among the stars not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple willingness to stand up and fight when others had given up hope. The Devourers still existed in the dark regions beyond known space, but now the galaxy was united and ready for them. And at the heart of that unity was a species that had been dismissed as too primitive to matter, but had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes from an unwillingness to surrender in the face of impossible odds.